He had learned the rhythm of the station long before he learned to sleep in it. Lights dimmed in slow cycles that matched no human clock. Air moved with a careful softness, never loud, never still. Even alone, he was never truly alone. The station listened. It watched. It adjusted. That was what the interspecies research habitat was built to do. It observed those inside it and tried, in its own quiet way, to keep them stable. Tonight, stability meant isolation. He lay on his narrow rest platform, eyes open, hands folded on his chest, staring at the curved ceiling above him. The surface glowed faintly, responding to his breathing, its color shifting just enough to remind him the system was active. The isolation cycle was mandatory. 24 hours alone. No visitors, no communication, no shared spaces. It was meant to reduce stress caused by cultural overlap. Most species required it. Humans, according to the reports, tolerated it better than most. He was not sure that was true. His name was Elias Verne, a systems analyst by assignment, a translator of behaviors by habit. He spent his days watching how non-human crews moved through corridors, how they paused, how they avoided or sought contact. Humans were new here, still being studied as much as they studied others. Elias had accepted the post knowing that. He told himself he did not mind being observed. Still, the silence pressed in. He shifted slightly, the fabric of his station-issued clothing whispering against the platform. He closed his eyes, then opened them again. Sleep did not come easily during isolation. Thoughts grew louder when there was nothing else to listen to. That was when the door opened. Not slid, not announced, it opened. The sound was soft, almost polite, but it should not have happened. Elias' breath caught as he turned his head. The doorway stood clear, the privacy seal gone as if it had never been there. Beyond it, the corridor lights glowed dim blue. Someone stepped inside. She moved without hurry, bare feet touching the floor with care, as though she were entering a place that mattered. She was shaped like a human woman, but Elias knew better than to trust that alone. Many species shared surface similarities. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, catching the low light. Her eyes were dark and steady, focused on him with an intensity that was not threatening but deliberate. She did not speak. The door closed behind her on its own. Elias pushed himself up on one elbow, his heart beating faster now. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, the words automatic, shaped by training. His voice sounded loud in the quiet room. She stopped a few steps away from the platform. For a moment, she only looked at him. There was no fear in her expression, no hesitation. If anything, she seemed calm in a way that made him feel suddenly uncertain of himself. Then she began to remove her clothing. It was not hurried, not suggestive. Each layer came away with careful movements, folded and placed aside as if the act itself carried meaning. What remained was not nudity meant to invite, but exposure that felt honest, almost ceremonial. Elias felt heat rise to his face, then confusion, then something quieter beneath it all. This was wrong. It broke rules he knew by heart. And yet the station did nothing. No alarm sounded. No automated warning filled the air. The ceiling light did not shift to emergency tones. The system that tracked every breath he took remained silent. "Stop," he said, softer this time, not commanding, asking. She met his eyes again, and something passed between them that he did not have words for, not a message, not a thought. More like an understanding that formed without sound. She moved closer. Elias did not move away. She climbed onto the platform beside him, her movements slow enough that he could have stopped her at any moment. She lay down on her side, facing the same direction he was, leaving a small but deliberate space between them. Her body was warm. He could feel it without touching her. The air itself seemed to hold the shape of her presence. Then she closed her eyes. That was all. They lay there side by side, not touching, not speaking. Elias' mind raced at first, searching for explanations. A malfunction, a test. a hallucination brought on by isolation. He watched the ceiling, waiting for it to react to correct this impossible moment. Nothing happened. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time felt different when nothing changed. Slowly, his breathing began to match hers. He noticed it without trying. The station adjusted the air again, smoothing the temperature, softening the light. It felt as if the room itself approved of what was happening, though he could not say why. He became aware of other things then, not voices, not images, feelings gentle and distant like echoes carried through water, a sense of vastness, of loneliness not as pain but as condition. He felt a question form, not in words but in weight. What are you? He did not know how he answered. He did not think he did. And yet the feeling shifted as if a response had been received. She turned her head slightly, just enough that he could see her profile. Her eyes were open now, watching the ceiling as he was. There was no smile on her face, but there was peace. Elias felt his fear loosen its grip. He realized then that she had not entered his space as an intruder. She had entered it as something else, as an equal perhaps, or as a mirror. The undressing, the closeness, the silence, it was not meant to provoke. It was meant to remove barriers, all of them. Humans built walls out of rules and words and distance. He had spent years studying how other species did the same, each in their own way. This being, whoever she was, had chosen none of those methods. She had chosen presence. Elias swallowed and let his head rest back on the platform. He did not reach for her. He did not need to. The space between them felt intentional, respected, shared, not crossed. His thoughts slowed. For the first time since arriving on the station, he did not feel observed. He felt seen. The station lights dimmed another fraction, responding not to command but to something else. To balance, perhaps. Elias wondered distantly how many systems had quietly adjusted to allow this moment to exist. How many layers of protocol had been set aside without resistance. He understood then that this was not an accident. Whatever she was, she had been allowed in. And whatever this moment meant, it was only beginning. When Elias woke, the first thing he noticed was the absence. The platform beside him was empty. For a brief moment, panic rose in his chest, sharp and sudden. He sat up, scanning the room. The folded clothing she had placed on the floor was gone. The doorway was sealed again, the privacy field glowing faintly as if it had never been breached. The station hummed softly, steady and normal. Too normal. He pressed his fingers against the platform where she had been. It was cool now. Whatever warmth had been there was gone, but the memory of it lingered in his body in a way he could not explain. It had not felt like a dream. Dreams blurred at the edges. This did not. He remembered the weight of silence, the shared breathing, the strange calm that had settled over him like a blanket. If it had been a hallucination, it was the most complete one he had ever experienced. He swung his legs over the side of the platform and stood. The station lights brightened slightly in response to his movement. His isolation cycle timer still showed several hours remaining. No alerts, no system errors, no record. That disturbed him more than if there had been one. Elias moved slowly around the room, touching the walls, the console, the sealed door. Everything responded as expected. He called up his personal system log and scanned through it. Heart rate variations, breathing patterns, neural activity markers, all within acceptable limits. No indication of stress, fear, or intrusion. The station had accepted her presence as if it belonged. He sat back down, running a hand through his hair. Questions pressed in on him now, louder than before. Who was she? How had she bypassed every security layer without leaving a trace? And why him? As if in response, the air shifted. Not a sound, not a movement, just a change in feeling, like pressure equalizing. Elias froze, suddenly aware again of that quiet presence, distant but focused. He closed his eyes. The sensations returned, faint at first. Not thoughts in the human sense, more like impressions, shapes of meaning without edges. He felt distance, vast and deep, stretching far beyond the station, beyond any single world. He felt waiting, long waiting. Not impatient, enduring. He understood then that what had happened was not over. He was not being haunted, he was being visited. "You're still there," he murmured, unsure why he spoke aloud. The words felt unnecessary, but human habits were hard to break. There was no reply. Not in sound. Instead, the sense of presence drew closer, careful and measured, as if respecting a boundary he had not spoken. Elias felt a memory surface that was not his own, a wide open space under unfamiliar stars. A body lying beside another, not for comfort but for understanding. The act repeated across time, across species, always the same. Contact through closeness. Elias opened his eyes, his breath slow and steady. He was not afraid now. He should have been. Every part of his training said he should report this immediately, escalate it, isolate himself further. But another part of him, quieter and older, told him that doing so would break something fragile. He waited. Hours passed. The isolation cycle ended without ceremony. A soft chime indicated he was free to leave his quarters. Elias stood, hesitated, then dressed and stepped into the corridor. Life on the station continued as usual. Crew members of many species moved through shared spaces, their routines unchanged. No one looked at him differently. No one stopped him. It was as if the universe had decided that what had happened was private. Elias made his way to his work section, his mind half focused on his tasks, half listening for that distant presence. It did not follow him in the same way. It remained adjacent, close enough to be felt, far enough to allow choice. At his console, he reviewed system behavior from the previous cycle. Subtle adjustments caught his eye. Environmental algorithms had shifted priorities during the time she was with him. Not errors, optimizations. The station had adapted to a new variable and decided it was beneficial. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the data. "You were expected," he whispered. This time the response was clearer. Not words, but certainty. Yes. The realization settled over him slowly. This was not a random encounter. The station had not been breached. It had participated. Somewhere deep within its layered intelligence, a decision had been made. Humans, Elias knew, were often underestimated. Physically fragile, short-lived, emotionally complex to the point of inefficiency. But they had one trait that rarely showed up in reports. They could share space without needing to own it. That evening, as station lighting shifted into its rest cycle, Elias returned to his quarters. He did not activate the privacy seal. He sat on the platform, waiting, unsure of what he expected. She did not come. Instead, the sense of her presence expanded, not focused on him alone now, but on the station as a whole. Elias felt it reach outward, touching systems, patterns, behaviors, observing, learning. He understood then that he had been the first point of contact, not the final one. Images flickered at the edge of his awareness. Other species, other stations, other attempts that had failed. He felt confusion, fear, aggression, dominance, always dominance, always the need to define, to control, to place one being above another. Humanity had done those things too, often, but it had also learned painfully how not to. Elias felt something like approval ripple through that vast presence, not praise, recognition. He lay back on the platform, staring up at the ceiling. "You're trying to understand us," he said quietly. The response was gentle, trying to understand if you can remain yourselves without pushing us away. The words were not spoken, but Elias felt their meaning clearly enough to answer. "We don't always get it right," he said. "But we know how to sit with things we don't understand." The presence paused, considered. "That is why you were chosen." The weight of that settled deep in his chest. Not pride, responsibility. Somewhere in the station, protocols shifted again. Barriers softened. Observation parameters changed. No announcements were made. No one panicked. The changes were small enough to go unnoticed, except by Elias. He closed his eyes, letting the station hum surround him. He understood now that what had begun beside him was growing outward, slowly and carefully. A test not announced, a question not spoken. Could humanity make room? As sleep finally claimed him, Elias felt the quiet certainty of an answer forming, not forced, not claimed, but offered. And somewhere beyond the walls of the station, something vast listened, patient and hopeful. The change did not announce itself. It never did. Elias noticed it first in the way the station felt when he walked through it. Corridors that once seemed neutral now carried a sense of openness, as if the space itself expected interaction rather than avoidance. Species that normally kept wide distance paused longer when passing one another. Some did not understand why they did so. Others pretended they had not noticed. The station was learning. Elias continued his work as usual, but his role had quietly shifted. He was no longer only watching systems. He was watching reactions, how beings responded when rules softened just a little, how they behaved when nothing forced them to choose but opportunity invited them to. The presence was still there, not beside him anymore, around him. It never pushed, never demanded attention. It observed with the patience of something that had waited longer than humans could easily imagine. When Elias focused, he could feel it the way one feels gravity, always present, rarely noticed, shaping everything. He did not tell anyone, not because he was ordered not to. No such order came. He remained silent because words felt too small for what was happening. Reports required definitions, categories, risks. This experience resisted all of those. One cycle, while reviewing interaction logs, Elias noticed an anomaly. A delegation species known for strict hierarchy had altered their movement patterns. They had allowed a junior member to remain present during a senior negotiation. That had never happened before. The station had not forced it. It had allowed it. Elias leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, and let his awareness expand. The presence responded, not with explanation, but with context. He felt past attempts layered over the present moment. Stations where first contact had turned into control, where proximity was interpreted as threat, where silence was filled with demands, always the same result: failure. "You're testing us," Elias said softly, though no one else was near. "Not testing," came the answer, calm and steady, confirming. The difference mattered. Humans were not being challenged to prove strength or intelligence. They were being observed to see if they could remain human when nothing rewarded dominance. As days passed, Elias became aware of others like him, not through names or messages, but through the presence's attention shifting gently, touching multiple points at once. Other humans, chosen not for rank but for temperament, people who listened more than they spoke, who could sit with discomfort without turning it into action. The presence lay beside them too, always the same way, quiet, undemanding, equal. Elias felt the weight of it then. This was not a single encounter, it was a pattern. A final attempt by something that had nearly given up. He accessed deeper station logs, areas normally filtered unless specifically requested. The AI allowed him through without question. There, buried under centuries of data, were records of species that no longer participated in the galactic network. Not destroyed, not conquered, withdrawn. They had been judged incompatible. Elias swallowed. Humanity was standing on that same edge, whether they knew it or not. The presence drew closer again, focused now. Elias felt a question forming, clearer than before. It was not asked in words, but he understood it fully. When given closeness, will you choose connection or control? He thought of Earth, of humanity's long history of mistakes and growth, of how often humans failed and how stubbornly they tried again anyway, of art and shared meals and silent companionship, of sitting beside someone in pain without trying to fix them. He let those thoughts exist without shaping them into defense or pride. "We'll try," he said at last. "That's the best we ever do." The presence accepted that. On the station, changes continued. Observation chambers became shared spaces. Translation delays shortened as species began relying less on precision and more on intent. There were moments of confusion, moments of tension, but no collapse, no panic. The station AI updated its internal models quietly. Elias noticed something else too. The presence was changing. It was no longer only observing. It was learning from the humans it rested beside. Their emotions did not overwhelm it. Their uncertainty did not frighten it. Instead, it began to mirror small things, pauses, hesitation, the careful choice to wait rather than act. One rest cycle, Elias felt it withdraw slightly, as if stepping back to look at the whole. Something was concluding. He stood at the wide observation window, watching a distant star slowly slide past as the station adjusted its orbit. He felt the presence gather, not into a single point but into understanding. The evaluation was ending. He did not feel relief. He felt a quiet sadness mixed with hope. Whatever the outcome, this chapter was closing. "You don't need me anymore," he said, not accusing, not asking. "You were never needed," the presence replied. "You were witnessed." That mattered more than Elias expected. He nodded, though no one could see him. Around the station, final adjustments settled into place. Protocols locked, systems stabilized. What had changed would remain. What had not was let go. Elias sensed other humans feeling the same quiet shift, even if they did not understand why. A shared moment passing. Then gently the presence pulled away. Not gone, just distant. Watching from far beyond the station, carrying with it everything it had learned. Elias stood alone again. But this time, the silence did not press in. He knew now that humanity had not been judged by its power, its speed, or its reach into the stars. It had been judged by what it did when nothing forced it to act. And for the first time in a long while, Elias believed that might be enough. The station felt quieter after the presence pulled away, but not empty. Elias noticed the difference in small moments. The hum of the system sounded the same, the lights followed their usual cycles, and crews moved through corridors as they always had. Yet something underneath it all had shifted. The tension he had not realized was gone, like a deep breath finally released. He continued his work, but now his observations carried a different weight. He was no longer watching to predict failure. He was watching to see what remained. What remained surprised him. Species that once avoided shared rest areas began using them without being told. Not often, not dramatically, but enough to matter. A being from a silicon-based culture sat near a human technician during a maintenance break, their bodies separated by form but aligned in stillness. Neither spoke, neither left. Elias logged the interaction, then paused before finalizing the report. He removed a single word from his description, anomaly. It no longer fit. The station AI did not question the edit. In meetings, protocols were discussed differently now, not rewritten but softened. Where once there were strict rules, there were now suggestions. Where there had been barriers, there were buffers. The idea was the same, safety, but the method had changed. Trust had entered the equation. Elias wondered how much of that change came from the presence, and how much came from humanity itself. Perhaps it did not matter. Influence and choice often braided together until they could no longer be separated. He felt the presence only faintly now, like a distant star whose light still reached him even though it had moved on. It did not intrude. It did not guide. It watched. One rest cycle, Elias found himself in the same position he had been the night it all began. Alone on his platform, lights dimmed, air soft and warm. He did not expect her to return. That chapter was closed. Still, he did not activate the privacy seal. He lay there, hands folded on his chest, thinking about what closeness meant. For humans, it was often tangled with fear, desire, and control. They struggled to separate those things. Yet when they managed to, something rare happened. Connection without ownership. He understood now why the presence had chosen humans to begin with. Not because they were perfect, but because they were unfinished, always changing, always learning, even when it hurt. The station AI initiated a quiet update during that cycle. Elias noticed the shift in data flow, the way certain classifications had been altered. He accessed the summary and read the new designation carefully. Humanity was no longer listed as a developing participant species. It was listed as a stabilizing presence. Elias exhaled slowly. That was not a title. It was a responsibility. Days later, a message arrived from Central Governance. Short, careful, neutral in tone. It requested observational feedback regarding recent behavioral shifts on the station. No accusations, no panic, just curiosity. Elias composed his response slowly. He did not mention the presence. He did not describe the moments of shared silence or the way the station had chosen to allow them. Instead, he spoke of humans' capacity to adapt without erasing others, of their ability to remain themselves while making space. He sent the message and leaned back, unsure how it would be received. The reply did not come quickly. While waiting, Elias watched the station continue to live. He saw misunderstandings resolved without escalation. He saw patience where there had once been rigid enforcement. Not everywhere, not always, but enough. He felt the presence stir then, not close, but attentive. Something beyond the station was shifting too. Decisions were being weighed, outcomes considered. The galaxy was not loud about such things. It moved carefully, shaped by long memory. One evening, as Elias stood by the observation window again, he felt a gentle pressure at the edge of his awareness. Not a return, but an acknowledgement. You were not altered, the presence conveyed. You were revealed. Elias smiled faintly. That's always been the hard part, he replied. The presence receded again, carrying that truth with it. The message from governance arrived the next cycle. Approval, expansion. Humanity's role within shared habitats would grow, not as enforcers, not as overseers, as anchors. Elias closed the message and sat quietly for a long time. He thought of the woman who had entered without knocking, of the vulnerability she had shown by removing every barrier, of the trust implied by choosing to lie beside someone unknown. That single act had changed everything, not because it was dramatic, because it was simple. The station lights dimmed as the cycle ended. Elias stood, feeling the steady presence of the station around him and the distant watchfulness of something far greater. Humanity had not claimed its place among the stars. It had been given one. And this time, Elias believed they might know how to keep it. The invitation did not arrive with ceremony. No ships gathered. No announcements echoed through the station. There was only a quiet update in the system, a shift in routing priorities, and a single line added to Elias' personal access feed. Expanded human presence approved. Elias read it twice, then once more, just to be sure. He did not feel excitement right away. What he felt was weight. Not heavy, not crushing, but solid, like something real settling into place. The galaxy had answered. Life on the station adjusted slowly, the way it always did when something important changed. New human specialists arrived over several cycles. Not soldiers, not commanders, people chosen for patience, curiosity, and emotional steadiness. Teachers, engineers, listeners. Elias watched them integrate, noting how little force was required. Humans moved into shared spaces without claiming them. They asked questions instead of issuing instructions. They learned names, habits, pauses. Other species noticed. Some were cautious. Some were curious. A few resisted quietly, clinging to old hierarchies. But there was no collapse, no backlash. The station held. Elias felt the distant presence again, not closer, not stronger, but attentive. It observed the expansion with careful interest, as if checking its conclusions against reality. The humans did not disappoint. Weeks passed, then months. The changes became normal. Shared silence became as common as conversation. Discomfort was allowed to exist without being treated as danger. Conflicts still happened, but they resolved more often through pause than pressure. One cycle, Elias was asked to mentor a newly arrived human observer. She was young, eager, and full of questions. As they walked through a wide corridor, she asked what had made the station change. Elias considered his answer. "Someone trusted us first," he said finally. She frowned. "Who?" He smiled faintly. "Someone who didn't need us to understand them right away." That night, Elias returned to his quarters earlier than usual. The station lights were already low, the air calm and warm. He sat on the platform, letting the quiet surround him. He did not expect anything. That was when the presence returned, not as a wave, not as an intrusion, as a gentle nearness, like someone standing just outside a door that no longer needed to be closed. Elias felt her before he saw her. The air shifted. The station did not react. It had learned this pattern well. She appeared as she had before, stepping into the room without sound, without urgency. She looked the same and yet different, not changed in form but in feeling. There was no testing in her presence now, no question, only acknowledgement. She did not undress this time. She did not lie beside him. She stood across the room, hands relaxed at her sides, and met his eyes. Elias stood slowly, his movements careful, respectful. "You came back," he said. Yes, the meaning came gently, not to test. To witness what followed, he nodded. "We're still learning." "So are we." That surprised him. He had assumed the learning flowed only one way. He felt a quiet warmth at that realization. She took a step closer, then stopped, giving him space. Elias felt the choice in that pause. He appreciated it. "You trusted us," he said. "That wasn't easy." No, it was not. For a moment, neither moved. The station hummed softly around them, a steady rhythm that felt almost like breathing. "You won't stay," Elias said. It was not a question, no. "But we will not withdraw." That mattered more than he could put into words. The presence shifted then, not toward him, but outward. Elias felt it connect to the station, to the other humans, to the shared spaces where quiet connections continued to form. It was not claiming them. It was acknowledging them. Elias understood then what humanity's place truly was. Not leaders, not saviors, witnesses. Beings who could sit beside others without needing to change them and without losing themselves. The woman inclined her head slightly, a gesture that mirrored something human. Elias felt a strange mix of pride and humility at that. "We'll keep making room," he said. "We know." She stepped back, her form beginning to soften at the edges, not vanishing, but transitioning into something less defined. Before she fully withdrew, Elias felt one final thought settle gently into his awareness. "The place beside you is no longer empty." Then she was gone. Elias stood alone in his quarters, the quiet deeper now, but not lonely. He activated the privacy seal out of habit, not necessity, and sat back on the platform. Outside, the station continued its slow orbit, carrying many species together through the dark. Somewhere far beyond it, decisions were being made, paths opening that had once been closed. Humanity would not be at the center of those paths, but it would be present. And for the first time since humans had reached for the stars, that felt like enough.